If you own an older Land Cruiser, you've probably come to realize that although these are ultra capable and reliable vehicles, they often need some love. And unless you plan on spending thousands of dollars taking it to a mechanic,
Rev up your engine!
You're gonna need some tools. But before you go spending money on a box set of assorted tools that you might not ever use, I'm gonna share with you my ultimate toolbox. It's a minimalistic approach to working on your Land Cruiser. And although I have an 80 series Land Cruiser, regardless of the Land Cruiser that you have, a majority of the tools that I cover in the video will be more than enough to help you get started on your journey to restoring your project Land Cruiser. Now, I like taking the minimalistic approach because I don't like clutter and I also like saving money. When I save money, that means more money for upgrades. Now, I've done my fair share of work on this old Land Cruiser, and I actually started my channel because there was a lack of maintenance repair videos for these Land Cruisers. Now, this is by no means an extensive list of all the tools that you need, but it is enough to get you started. Let's get right into it. First up, you need a good set of metric sockets and a nice ratchet. I wouldn't buy a box set because they often come with tools that you rarely use. Instead, I would purchase a very specific set like this one. I purchased this shallow socket set from Harbor Freight for only about $35, and I like it because it doesn't skip sizes. It goes from 8mm to 19mm, and it's going to cover the majority of repairs that I'm going to encounter. It's a 6-point, so it reduces the risk of stripping a bolt, as you can see in the side-by-side comparison. And for the most part, you'll be using sizes 10, 12, 14, and 17 on these older Land Cruisers, and I like to mark them just so I know where they're at. And I also have a deep socket set, again 8mm to 19mm. The next thing I would recommend having is a socket extension set. This is going to be crucial for those hard to reach places, and it allows you to have a little bit of leverage when pulling those bolts out. Moving on to some larger socket sizes, I purchased this deep impact socket set from Harbor Freight, and it has a variety of sizes. The ones that you're going to need specifically for the 80 series Land Cruiser are the 21mm, the 24mm, and although this next one didn't come with the set from Harbor Freight, I purchased it on Amazon, you will need a 54mm. And these will be essential for those larger bolt or nut sizes like removing your tire, or changing the diff fluid, or your transfer case fluid, or even your transmission fluid. And the 54mm will be essential for when you rebuild your front axle on your 80 series. The adjustable wrench is a perfect quick fix for different size bolts because you can adjust it. This is a great tool to have in any toolbox. Another tool you'll want to have is a set of ratcheting wrenches. Again, the sizes are going to be 10, 12, 14, and 17. Those are going to be the most commonly used. Moving on to one of the most important tools that you'll need is a breaker bar and some PB Blaster or WD-40. This is going to be essential for removing those stubborn bolts that refuse to budge. Especially on an older Land Cruiser like this, with a good amount of leverage, you could avoid stripping bolts and save yourself from a ton of frustration. Moving on to screwdrivers. I recommend getting a set of flatheads in different sizes. And these are not all the same brand. Some of these I borrowed from my dad and I just never gave them back. Screwdrivers aren't just for flathead screws, they're pretty much a multi-purpose tool and I use them quite often. Another type of screwdriver you will definitely be using is a JIS screwdriver. And although this looks like a Phillips head screwdriver, it is different. This is specific to Japanese vehicles. So you want to make sure that you get a JIS set. And sometimes people will use Phillips heads and they'll strip the screw because they're not using the correct tool. I did this a ton of times until I finally gave in and purchased this set off of Amazon. These are going to come in handy for everything from interior trim to engine adjustments. Next up is a set of pliers. You're going to need all kinds of different pliers, and these are the pliers that I go for most often in my toolbox: needle nose, locking pliers, groove joint pliers. These are often what I reach for because they're the most convenient and the easiest to handle. So I highly recommend getting a set of pliers that work best for you. Now let's talk about some tools that have made my journey to restoring my Land Cruiser a whole lot easier. First up is a torque wrench. It is often overlooked by many DIY mechanics, but it is super important. There are certain bolts and nuts that you need to make sure that you torque down properly, because otherwise it could cause damage to critical engine components or drivetrain components, or it could leave you on the side of the road. Trust me when I say this, get one of these, learn how to use it, and it'll be a lifesaver. Probably one of the most inexpensive yet most useful tools is a magnetic reach tool and a magnetic tray. When you're working on your vehicle, the last thing you want to do is spend some time searching for bolts that have fallen or having to go buy a replacement bolt. A magnetic reach tool helps you grab those small parts and bolts and nuts, and a magnetic tray helps them stay organized to make sure you don't lose them. Next thing we have is a brass drift and a hammer. Now, if you're ever dealing with stubborn or rusted parts that need a little bit of hammering, this combo is your friend. The brass drift is softer than steel, so it won't deform or damage the part you're working on, especially when you're tapping something out like a bearing. Using the brass drift with a hammer lets me apply force without leaving ugly marks or damaging critical parts and components. Moving on to the pick tool set. This one might seem small or even insignificant, and it's actually super cheap, so most people overlook it, but it's honestly been one of the most versatile tools that I've mentioned so far. From removing O-rings to picking out dirt from hard to reach spots, these picks are perfect for handling delicate or precise tasks. Whether you're working with tight engine spaces or dealing with small seals, they help loosen up or remove the parts that are so hard to get, especially if you have fat fingers like me. And finally, we have flashlights. This is often overlooked, but it's absolutely essential when you're working under the hood or in the dark. There's all kinds of different variations for flashlight, but the one that I've used most often is this one right here from Harbor Freight. It's rechargeable and it's got a magnetic base, so I could basically attach it anywhere that I need to, and I can have a nice source of light while I'm working. Headlamps are also really good, especially if you're working in the dark or in a cramped space or under the vehicle. So that's my minimalist tool setup for working on my Land Cruiser. I can tackle almost any repair or maintenance job without being bogged down by extra gear, and each tool has its purpose. Keeping things simple and effective helps me focus on the work at hand, and it helps keep my setup portable and easy to manage. That is it for the video today, guys. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope it helps you in restoring your Land Cruiser back to its original glory. As many of you know and probably have already noticed, I'm going through a little bit of a transitionary period within my channel, going from purely Land Cruiser content to other topics and things that interest me. So I hope you stick around. I hope you guys watch. I'll still continue to post Land Cruiser related videos, but as you know, most of us have different hobbies. We all like different things. So hopefully we like the same things, and if you don't, hopefully I can entertain you at least. You guys have a good one. Thanks for watching.